Welcome everyone to this episode of Perpetual Perspectives powered by Vest Exchange. Vest is a novel perpetual futures exchange built on ZK Sync. I'm your host Stoic, and today I have the pleasure of having with me Mercury, aka TraderMercury on Twitter. He's been trading for over 7 years now, traded stocks initially and got into crypto in November of 2017. He talks about initially investing, quadrupling his account, and then taking a 90% drawdown, which is kind of how he got started down the path of trading. Keeps the system extremely elegant and simple, uses horizontal levels, if I'm not mistaken, 100, 200 MA and EMAs and market structure for the most part. And he talks a lot about focusing on psychology and discipline, which is exactly why I'm extremely excited to have him on. So thank you for sitting down and having this discussion with me, Mercury. And without stalling too much, let's get right into it. First things first, is there anything that I missed out on that you would like to fill in the gaps on in terms of your introduction, or anything that I might have mischaracterized?
No, the only thing is I don't use 100 moving average. I use 200 MA and I use 200 EMA. So it's very obscure, very unique. Probably the only person that does that, really.
Yeah, I've never heard of that before. That's very interesting.
Yeah, exactly. Because I don't use any other moving averages. I only use 200 MA, 200 EMA. So, but yeah, it's very unique to me, and I've had the pleasure of making educational content and whatnot, and now I scroll down my feed and I see a bunch of charts that look like mine. It's really a beautiful thing because, I grew up in the space and learned a lot from the people before me. And I was able to pass down, what I learned. And it's really awesome. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And thanks for that clarification. But so let's start off with something pretty remedial and trivial, and then we'll kind of build our way to the eventual conversation. But what I wanted to start off with was, what's the story behind your Twitter name? Why did you choose Mercury?
Oh, man. So first of all, I used to be Cookie Monster. Not a lot of people know that. People who've been with me since the beginning actually know that. But yeah, my TradingView username is still Cookie Monster. Somebody actually commented on it the other day. And then I had a friend of mine who was kind of in my ear, like, man, you have a lot of potential. Like you could really be like a crypto Twitter influencer, but people aren't going to take you seriously if you're Cookie Monster. I was like, you don't think so? He's like, no, man. He's like, you got to change it. I was like, okay. So I sat down and I thought about it. And so, yeah, Mercury is the god of trade, or I believe the Roman god of trade. So in Roman mythology. And I just like planets and I like space. So I just kind of, chose the name Mercury. And then initially it was like a picture of a planet. And then eventually it adapted into a tree because the tree signifies knowledge and wisdom and life. So I kind of just, adapted that. Before Tree of Alpha, let me say that. I was a tree before it was cool to be a tree. But yeah, so it just eventually developed into that. And yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I typically like to ask that, and usually I always get well thought out answers. Like it's never, like it was just for the hell of it, so I'm always interested in that. And then really quickly, I mean, we kind of went over, how you trade, but how would you describe your edge in a few sentences?
Oh man, I don't have one. And that's the honest, genuine truth. If I had an edge, then I wouldn't share with you. Right. Yeah, but like my edge is, my edge is not my system. My system is overly simplified. Yeah. And so my system allows me the ability to understand markets with the utmost kind of clarity so that I can simplify it to my own brain and be able to digest it for myself so that I can implement good habits, good practices, right? Bi-directional kind of analysis, good risk management, a good adaptation to a trending market and knowing when to adapt and into a ranging market, things like that. So the edge is really the psychological aspect. The edge is really, I am the edge. And somebody asked me a long time ago, they said, are you afraid of alpha decay? And they said, you make all these educational YouTube videos, you share everything about your system, you share, your psychology, your, the way that you adapt to markets. I do daily updates in my free Discord every single day and give my, clear thoughts on the market with, a directional bias. So people are learning from me and picking up things. And somebody said, are you afraid of alpha decay? And I said, you can't have alpha decay if you don't have alpha. I am the edge. I am my alpha. So unless I get dementia, it's never going to decay. But yeah, it's good practices, man. It's good habits. It's knowing your management. It's knowing when to adapt. It's that.
Yeah, it's so beautiful, and that's exactly what I wanted to hear from you. And a lot of people will be listening in, and probably look at your charts and say, "Oh, that's so easy," like but it's not. It's exactly what you said. There is no edge. It's the psychology and the it's you. You're the person that's implementing implementing that. So that's where the edge is. And what I want to dig into a little bit is the evolution of your trading style from a technical. Let's start from a technical perspective first, right? From the beginning to now, how has that evolved? And initially, what information were you watching or reading? Like, how did the journey start to where you are now?
Oh man, name an indicator, and I've used it before.
Mm-hmm.
I was the guy who had a million different levels on the chart, horizontal levels, and I would have different color codes for every single one. This is a weekly level, so it's blue, and this is a daily level, so it's red, and then this is a green one, it's like a 1 hour level. I would do that, and then I would have 18 million different moving averages on the chart. I would have stacked up MACD, stochastic RSI, and then my trading view chart got scrunched up so much that you couldn't even actually see the chart itself. Man, that's how I started. It was all vanity to me. It wasn't actually benefiting me. And eventually I got down to the point where I was just using a bunch of different moving averages and RSI and then horizontal levels and market structure. And then it got to the point where I was actually finding myself like I couldn't focus on. So a good example of this is Pierre. Pierre is an absolute legend, right? There's levels to this. And Pierre is by all means well above me. I have nothing but respect for him. But he uses all the different moving averages on the exact same chart, and he can give you a full-fledged breakdown on every single time frame for every single kind of like local trend, high time frame trend, very local trend, right? He can break it down 17 different ways on one chart, and all the notes are right there on the chart. When my brain looks at that, I can't comprehend it. The way that I have to work is I have to break it down by time frame and then kind of understand that specific time frame individually and then scale either upwards or downwards and then piece the puzzle together. So eventually I started to use like 200 moving averages only because the way that came in as part of my system was I was asking people like, hey, you've been trading for a decade. Is moving average better or is exponential moving average better? And man, if you go ask this question right now, it's going to be 50-50, right? Like some people will tell you use MA, some people will tell you, and I hear this a lot, use EMA because crypto tends to be more volatile and EMA tends to lag less. So you hear different things. And I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to put both of them on. And, eventually through my own forward testing, I'll see which one is better. And then what I actually found was I really like my brain is able to understand what I'm trying to achieve better if I'm using both of them, because it kind of represents more of a cloud and a more general kind of portrayal and a more general region rather than trying to be very precise and it's just one moving line and I need that line to portray an exact pico bottom or pico top, right? So eventually I just kind of loved it. And then I was still using RSI at the time, and that became an issue because man, I could just keep going down the rabbit hole. But eventually that became an issue because I wasn't finding myself writing trends. I was cutting things early. I was right. And I find it ironic that the entire premise as to why we're all here is because we want the 10Xs, we want the 50Xs, we want the 100Xs, right? We want the bull market. We want euphoric price discovery, right? You can't even fathom how high this is going to go kind of thing, right? Well, I kind of started to realize over time that there was no possible way that I was going to be able to actually achieve that and be rewarded in that kind of an environment. I always say, like, we spend 100% of our time waiting for the 10% of the time where the market is in a bull market. And I was finding that there was no way that I was ever going to do well in that kind of environment. So I was shooting myself in the foot long term. I kind of noticed this preemptively. And March 2020 had a lot to do with that. We can go down that rabbit hole if you want me to. But So yeah, I eventually found that it was actually better for me to just turn RSI off entirely. And I just tried it and for a couple of months, and I actually found that I was way better, right? My performance had just very drastically. It wasn't even just like a subtle difference. It was like a drastic increase in my performance. So I just stuck with it. And that's been the case for about 4 years now. I've just been using the same system, just 200 moving averages, market structure, and horizontal gray boxes to portray support and resistance.
Yeah, it's awesome. And what I think what's really important here is self-realization, right? And I think that's so important that a lot of people miss out on is what am I really good at, and what are my weaknesses, and honing into what you're good at and making that into a weapon. And along the same lines, what I wanted to ask you is, in terms of mindset, how has your mindset evolved since you first started, and with all the losses that you took, like how did you work on your mindset?
Oh man. Okay, so to go a little bit more in depth into my story, and you nailed it. I quadrupled my account in November of 2020, or November 2017. Sorry, that's when I joined crypto. I bought XRP, ADA, all the um, shit coins and whatnot, and then I bag held negative 90%, and for whatever reason during that year, I just kind of stuck with it. I just, I allowed those bags to keep running, but I was taking every paycheck and just throwing it into crypto and starting to trade. And I just wanted to figure out, how is it that I can actually trade and make money? And then, there was that little part of me in the back of my head that was saying, and then maybe, my bags will come back to life one day. That never actually
Yeah.
happened. I still have my Verge bag that is worth like half of a penny. Um, but, uh, but yeah, so I just kind of grinded, man. I spent, I kid you not, 12 to 14 hours a day staring at charts and
Mm-hmm.
pushing buttons. So I was
Mm-hmm.
actively trading those low time frames, which meant that I was getting a lot of experience, and that experience was compounding to an exponential kind of degree. Right. So like somebody has 10 years of experience trading, but they only trade 1 hour a day, or they only, are watching the market 1 hour a day. I was watching the market 12 to 14 hours a day
Mm-hmm.
for a year and a half straight. Um, and I absolutely nuked my mental health, my physical
Yeah.
health, my social
Yeah.
life. I nuked everything, man. It
Yeah.
honestly, it wasn't worth it. Um, and then I just kind of grinded. And truthfully, the ironic part about this is that I was actually a range trader before I was a trend trader. I was only
Interesting.
good at trading ranges. And my bread and butter was, every time that we would deviate back inside of a range, I would
Mm-hmm.
buy that range low reclaim, hide
Right.
stop below deviation, target range highs, and target expansion. And because of that kind of philosophy, I was able to thrive in 2019. I multiplied my account in a
Right.
very short period of time, right? Bitcoin goes up 300% or so in the span of like 6 months. And you're just constantly catching every single move and then letting it run. And then the next range forms and you compound your position. Um, just be mindful that at this time, I still did not know what true risk management was.
Right.
Um, I thought that I was managing my risk, and I thought that I was managing my risk proportional to my age. Because when you're 19 years old and
Yeah.
trading markets and in crypto, people will tell you, hey, just go balls to the wall with your risk.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
who cares, right? And
Exactly.
I hate that people say that, man. I really do. You're 19 years old. It's time to be a big boy and move out of mommy and daddy's house and start your life and get shit together. But man, I took that advice and I ran with it. And I tried to, I was trading with 100% of my entire net worth, pretty much. I kid you not, there was a point where there was $10 in my bank account. So doing that, and I actually, man, I thrived. I did so incredibly well. I multiplied my account,
Mm-hmm.
uh, just phenomenal kinds of gains. I thought I was the absolute shit. Ego was out of this world.
Yeah.
I was calling bottoms, calling tops, absolutely nailing every single one, trading bi-directionally, trading the bottoms and the tops, just absolutely killing it. And then March 2020 came. And March 2020, the idea was to sell 10K on the initial rally, and it was long from like 6.5 or whatever. Bought the bottom, sold the top. Nothing new here. I'm like, let's keep it going. buy back 8.2K or something. It was like the 200 daily moving averages. That was supposed to be the higher low before, the bull market starts and we go to, 100K or whatever. And that was the idea. So I bet my entire net worth on that, idea, just the same way that I had for the past year and a half. And I was wrong. March 2020 happened and I watched my entire account draw down negative 80% in the span of like 2 weeks. And I didn't know what it was like to lose. It sounds super arrogant, reflecting on it, but I didn't know what it was like to lose big. And so when I was sitting there, prices like 7.4K, I was paralyzed. This is 100% of my net worth, so I didn't know what to do. And yeah, March 2020 happened, humbled the shit out of me, made me kind of reconsider, is this even for me? Like, do I even want to be a trader kind of thing? And then my dad, man, my dad is the most legendary guy. For context, my dad moved to a new country at 18 years old with $60 in his pocket, and has consistently been on a journey of building a business and then selling it, building the next one. It fails, trying again, building the next one, selling it, yay, it's profitable, builds the next one, and then it fails, right? Just has done that so many times over. And at some point in my young life, when I was around 13 or 14 years old, we had everything going for us. And then my parents made some very, very bad financial decisions and had to declare bankruptcy. And this was mostly due to the 2008 financial crisis that had affected us. So then a couple years later, that effect really starts to come into play, and it gets to the point where, we start to get evicted from our house. I go homeless for about 2 weeks or so. We're living in a car, and it's a, pretty big family. So that happened. And so imagine going from multimillionaire, very successful businessman to having nothing and living in a car. And when March of 2020 happened, I remember not being able to eat, right? Like losing my appetite. I totally lost, mental control. I was just living in my room and just, in a dark place, mentally and also physically, because I wasn't eating. I wasn't doing anything. My dad walked in one day, a couple days later. He's like, "What's going on?" And I told him. And then I'll never forget this, man. Most life-changing advice I've ever heard. He said, "You have two options." He said, "You're crying over money." He said, "You either stop crying over money or you stop trading." And I was like, man, it still gives me chills to think about it. But
that's beautiful.
From that point onward, I was like, wow, either I stop trading and I take a new venture, right? I just say, you know what, the past couple of years were for nothing. And, maybe I need to go pursue a different career, go to college, do whatever. Or I stop crying about money. Because here's the man who was a multimillionaire and has lost, right? Has been on the top and lost it all several times over. And I know what he's been through. I've watched it happen. And he's telling me to not cry over money, right? If someone to that degree with those experiences can tell you to not cry over money, then like, what am I actually crying over? So from there onward, total mindset shift, man. To absolute mindset shift. How do I get my shit together? How do I make sure that this never happens again? Okay, trend trading. Okay, actual risk management. Okay, a balanced portfolio. Okay, lose the ego, right? Develop some humility. Total mindset shift. And then so everything that I can ever possibly tell you today has only ever stemmed from March of 2020 onward, from when my dad gave me that advice, but in accounting for my experience as a whole.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. I'm glad you shared that in detail. And there's a couple of things there, right? So I really relate to this as well, in the sense that I'm a first generation as well. So my father migrated from a different country, and had to start from scratch. So the thing that I want to touch on here is like just that grit you see your parents, your father, your parents go, that grit and that sense of like there's no sense of entitlement, right? And I think that really contributed in how I grew up, and I kind of sense that from what what you just shared. And I think that's what's required with trading as well. I think you need a lot of grit.
Yeah. You have to have a fire in your belly. Something has to keep you going. And it's definitely, my parents never actually recovered from that. and they're in a spot where, you know, they are what people will call lower middle class, which
Mm-hmm.
in actuality is like you're going to work until the day you die. You're never going
Yeah,
to be able
yeah,
to actually retire. They
yeah.
have no savings. They have, you know, they live paycheck to paycheck. Thankfully, their house is paid off, but we got lucky. It was a
Mm-hmm.
relative's house, and we were able to. That's the only way that I wasn't homeless, is I was able to move in with a relative.
Right.
And then, you know, so that's the case for my parents, and that's the fire that's in my belly. Is
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know, they
yeah.
don't get to retire unless I retire them. So, and I feel it, you know, deep in my core that that's like my main purpose, and that's been my goal since I was about 14 years old. Um,
That's beautiful, man. That's
yeah,
beautiful, and that makes sense. And you know, I relate to that as well. My parents started with nothing, and you know, that was what really fueled me as well. Um, and yeah, that's beautiful. I'm really glad you shared that.
yeah, of course.
And because I wanted to talk about this as well, because I went through this where I was spending 12, 14 hours a day in front of charts, right? And that's what fueled me. So I wanted to ask where that was coming from for you. And the one thing that I've realized is a common theme, because I've always studied individuals in whatever realm it is. You know, it could be athletes, it could be traders, it could be people in the world of finance, and I've always been interested in learning their journey and find like common themes, right? And one of the common themes that I've found is there's always a period of extreme obsession where but everything else does not matter. And not to say that's healthy, like no one's saying, you know, I mean, you said you regret it and it wasn't worth it. And I've heard that time and time again, you know, people who are successful say, okay, I regretted doing that time period. But at the same time, that's like a common theme I found where it's individuals who basically give everything else up, and it's almost like obsessive. It's an obsession to become better at your craft.
Yeah, I can definitely speak a lot to this. And Kobe Bryant has a great quote out
Yeah.
there somewhere. I know that I'm going to butcher it, but he says something about obsession and how you can never be better than me because you'll never be more obsessed than I am, or
Right.
something along those lines. And it's like there is a lot of truth to that, man. The issue is, and it's a catch 22, because I say that I regret it, but at the same time, the only reason why I am here today, which I, you know, at the top of the world right now, I'm, you know, living my best life. Couldn't be happier. The only reason that I am where I am today is because of that experience. So I can't actually say that I regret it. What I
Mm-hmm.
actually regret is there's a very, very thin line between addiction and obsession. And I was
Yeah.
well over that line, well past the obsession line, and
Yeah.
I was addicted, you know. So that's the tough part, is managing and differentiating how am I going to be obsessed with this and really hone in on this skill, um, and on this mindset and, you know, the market, but without getting addicted. It's very, very difficult. I feel as though today I've kind of mastered it, but
Yeah.
man, it is a very,
Absolutely.
very tedious process.
It is. It is. And just to narrow it down a little bit more, you know, I believe there's a lot of elegance and simplicity, and your approach strips away a lot of what you feel, you know, what you believe is fluff for your thought process. How did you come upon that balance? You know, that sweet spot of being able to pull the trigger with the information available. That could look different for different people, right? But it requires self-realization. A lot of people get lost in the sauce in terms of, you know, like you said, indicators, or you know, using order flow, using technical analysis. But a lot of people try a lot of different things, but they never hone it down for their individual psychology or mindset like you did. Like how did you like, you were trying everything and then you're like, okay, I'm gonna throw away everything and I'm just gonna use these two MAs and EMAs. How did that come about?
Yeah. I think somebody one day told me keep it simple, stupid, and I just kind of ran with it. No, it's honestly, it's a lot of humility came into play,
There you go. Yeah.
because after a couple years in, you know, 4 years in or so, you start to realize, like, am I actually alpha? Like, do I actually know what the hell I'm talking about? Sure, I got lucky for, you know, a good span there where I was calling bottoms and tops in 2019. I did well, but like, other than that, if we take a long term picture, are my thoughts alpha? Does the market actually care what I think about it? And the more I think about it, or the more that I thought about it, I was like, no, I'm not alpha. You know, I'll make a call Like I called the top. I said in July of 2023, hey, spot ETF approval is going to mark the top. And that's a lucky call, man. Like it's uncanny accurate. Oh my God, he's such a genius. He's a crystal ball, right? No, there are the other half of the time where I'm making a prediction and it's couldn't be farther off, right? So then I think back on that and I'm like, okay, now fast forward 7 years of trading crypto. Are my thoughts alpha? And I can honestly, genuinely tell you, no, they're not. It's not alpha. So how is it that I'm going to humble myself and ensure that if we go into a bull market, I'm a participant. And if we go into a bear market, I'm not a participant, right? I'm not sitting here coping and seething and, hey, you're saying that, this is fear and capitulation. I'm not feeling any of that. I'm, euphoric because my purchasing power is up 6x or whatever. So how is it that I can do that? It's just, oh, let me just be objective about it. What is the market itself doing? Are we heading to the top right corner? Are we heading to the bottom right corner? Are we going sideways? Are we above key trends? Are we below? Right. Just let me be objective about it. And then the issue transitioned into, okay, well, how can I be objective about an analysis if I'm biased and I want this to happen? And then it was like, okay, wait. I can be, objective in my analysis as much as I possibly want, but I'm not going to be able to put it into practice unless I'm coming from a balanced standpoint, from a balanced state of mind, where I'm allowing the market to do whatever the hell it wants to do. And I don't really care, right? There's no care attached to it. Previously to having these thoughts, man, I tell you, addicted. I was the guy who I wake up in the morning, I check TradingView. 5 minutes go by as I'm making my cup of coffee, I'm watching the charts, right? Like I would wake up in the middle of the night and not be able to sleep. Okay, let me what price is Bitcoin at? Like, like I kid you not, man. I really was that guy. Like we'd be out to dinner, I'd be on a date, at this point I'm trying to date around and, get a girl. I'm like 17, 18 years old. No, I'm literally on TradingView in between. She goes to the bathroom. Cool. That's a chance for me to go check TradingView. Like addiction, man. And I think back on that. I'm like, wow, that was terrible. Like that was a really terrible experience. That was not a good mind state to be in. How do I prevent that? And it's like, wait, if I just dumb it down, right? If I dumb it down to my IQ level, which is like 70 IQ, and then maybe I actually have a chance of beating this and actually, efficiently extracting some value from this and benefiting my life the way that I want it. And then I saw it happen, right? I started to apply those thoughts and listen, man, you can't believe something if you never experienced it, but you just got to hope and have that belief and have faith and put it into practice, put that winner's mindset into practice, put those good habits into practice. And then over time, you start to get vindicated. Like, wait, this actually is a real thing. Like I can actually do this on a longer term basis. So you keep going. And then the longer that it goes on, the more and more experience piles on, and the more vindication and belief in your own approach, your own system, the way that you think about things, your everything, your portfolio, how you're balancing things, everything just starts to pile on top of each other. So I always say it's Ouroboros. It's the cycle of life and death. The only way to get better in markets is to actually have conquered markets. But the only way to conquer markets is to actually go out there and trade markets. And it's so like catch 22. So you just have to start putting into practice and develop that.
Yeah, there's so many amazing points you brought up here. I get asked this time and time again, with people, okay, like what book should I read? Okay, there's phenomenal books out there, but you have to get dirty. You have to get in the mud. You have to learn the lessons, right? You're not just going to read books and become a trader that's consistently profitable. And, you talked about dumbing it down. And I think a lot of people, that's where they kind of fail to recognize that. And how much do you think, how individual is it? Because what I believe is it's very individual in nature in terms of how your mind, how your brain works, and what system will work well for you. How individual do you think that is?
Oh man, it's personalized for sure.
Right.
So this is why, like, when I'm talking to other traders and they're asking me questions and hey, like, how do you think about this and what are your thoughts on the market and this and that, whatever, I always tell them, like, I'm preaching a mindset. I preach a philosophy, an approach of a foundation. I'm not preaching, hey, go use market structure, interpret market structure the same way that I do, right? I'm not saying that. I'm not saying, hey, get rid of all the other moving averages on your chart and just use 200 MA and EMA. I never said that. I will never tell anybody to do any of those things. I'll never say that, hey, I don't like your support and resistance draw. Delete it and draw it the way that I drew it, right? Yeah. Like, I will never do any of that. It doesn't make any sense. Everything is personalized, and your journey is, and the roadblocks that are along the way are going to be very specific to you as the individual. And I don't believe in copy trading for this exact reason. But yeah, and just as an example, I'm actually very risk averse in nature. And I know this is very contradictory to, risking my entire net worth 100% for a year and a half straight on every single trade that I took. But that was just a kind of like, I have to make it kind of thing. Truthfully, I was in like a quarter life crisis where I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. It felt like a failure. Wasn't going to college, didn't have anything going for me. So all those emotions came into play. But truthfully, deep down at my core, I'm risk averse. And I want to say that this is probably why I inevitably failed, because I was trying to be something that I wasn't, right? I'm not high stakes capital. I will never be able to be high stakes capital. I'll never have that crazy, run up story and have, 50 million or 100 million or whatever he has, right? That's never going to be me. And I'm totally fine with that. And I've come to terms with that, and I accepted it. But yeah, man, it's so personalized. So what ended up happening, and one of the biggest roadblocks in my journey, was because I was so risk averse, I was closing trades preemptively. And this is very detrimental to a trend trader, because as a trend trader, you might have a 50% hit rate, and you need those winners, the 50%, to run to a certain amount to overcompensate for the amount of times that you're going to lose. You really have to milk the most out of your winners. So when you're not milking the most out of your winners, but you're still, eating a full loss on your losers, you're not profitable. You're not making money. It's very detrimental long term. And it's like, it's always, biting into the short-term satisfaction and not risking the long-term kind of gains, right? Just kind of saying, okay, I don't even want to risk it. I'm just going to take the short-term satisfaction right now because I'm up, this amount and this green P&L number, man, it looks so pretty. Let me market close. So I had to get over that fear. I had to get over that roadblock. And that was something that was personalized to me. Someone else is listening to me say this right now and is like, man, I have the opposite issue. I don't close trades, at the right time. I just hold them to, retrace and break even. So, you have to figure out how your brain ticks. And the beauty of markets really is that when you come in, you try to master the market. You're not really trying to master the market. And I never look at it that way. I'm never thinking about my counterparty, right? I'm never thinking about, oh, this dude on Twitter posted a short and I'm long. No, I'm never thinking about that. I don't care, right? It's markets. There's always going to be someone on the other side of the trade. This is why the market exists. So to me, it's just a tool. It's just, it's a third party in itself. And I just get to use this tool and utilize it to extract value from it. It's just me against myself. And I get to use this tool to extract value. So the beauty of markets is when you come in, you try to master the market. You're really not trying to master the market. You're trying to master yourself. Yes. I think the reason that markets are so difficult is because self-mastery is probably the hardest fucking thing in the world.
100%.
Yeah,
that's so beautiful. This is amazing. I'm so glad we're having this conversation, man. Like, I agree with you so heavily on this, and a lot of people do not talk about this. And so you talked about risk management, and what I wanted to talk to you about was loss. And how do you deal with loss now, and insignificant loss? What do you do in those moments now, after you've been trading for 7 years? Have you dealt with any loss or significant loss recently, or stream of losses, or anything of that nature? Honestly, it could be trading related or otherwise, or something that irked you. Like, how do you deal with it now?
A streak of losses, yeah, sure. I can't tell you the last time I lost more than like 3 or 4 in a row. Right. And truthfully, I haven't had a sizable loss in a very long time. Mm-hmm. I do scale my position sizes along with conviction, but I've been very blessed the past year or so that all of my high conviction kinds of bets have been right. So, I haven't actually dealt with a very sizable loss in a very long time. I have obviously dealt with winning or with losing streaks. That's inevitable. You're always going to come across that, especially as a trend trader. You're in 5 different altcoins. You've been trading those trends for however long. You go and open 5 more, and eventually what's going to happen is all 5 get stopped out. So you're going to take those losses, and that, drawdown is on its way. It's coming. But the specific kind of psychology that affects me is expunge your mind of your previous all-time high net worth. And that was a new issue. Once I started to catch my stride and actually start to get a feel for my system and the way that I'm approaching markets, and actually started winning, I couldn't really deal with, man, it's so deep in your psychology. I couldn't really deal with, like, here's an example. I'm worth $10,000, let's say, and I do incredibly well, and I have a crazy run up over the course of 6 months, and 6 months later I'm worth $50,000. Well, my net worth has just 5x'd, but only 6 months have gone by. So then when I'm worth 50 grand at my all-time high net worth, and then trends start to break, because I'm a trend trader, it's inevitable, I start to give back. So maybe by the time that it's all said and done, I've locked everything in, I'm worth $40,000, right? And that is the realized profit, how much I actually locked in. Well, only 6 months have gone by, and I just lost what my net worth was 6 months ago. That's tough, man. It is so tough to get past that. It's draining. It screws with you mentally, and you're listening to this and you're like, but you still have 40,000. And it's like, exactly, that's the point, right? So it's like, but when you're actually in the moment, man, it's so tough. It's very difficult to get past that. The honest thing that I can say, the best thing that I can say, is eternal sunshine of the spotless mind, and expunge your mind of your previous all-time high net worth. I always hold on to those 2 quotes, man. But truthfully, when I come across a losing streak and it actually starts to affect me, it really never affects me anymore. It's par for the course. But if it actually starts to screw with my head mentally, I take a break. No. Just take a break. And I know it's the most generic advice and the most regurgitated information, but it's also incredibly hard to do, especially if you find that you're addicted to markets. If you're obsessed and you're convinced, hey, I'm not in that line of addiction, I'm just obsessed, right? I'm Kobe Bryant. And then it's like, okay, walk away and don't look at charts for a week. It's like, no, I can't do that though. Well, why not? Because you're addicted, right? That's why. Right. So honestly, what I think is a lot of people will find is taking a break is probably going to be the most beneficial thing, because it oftentimes tends to be the hardest thing to do. And you'll probably find that in life, the hardest things to do are frequently the most rewarding. So that's how I deal with that.
Yeah, 100%. That's so true. I think overtrading is definitely one of the most significant issues when it comes to traders. And alluding to keeping money, the proof is in the pudding, Mercury, right? Like, I mean, there's people, like, I personally know people that have run up, in this past cycle, they've run up into the millions and ran it all the way back down, right? So making money and keeping money are 2 different things. And it's like you said, once you start losing money and you think about, okay, this is where I was, my net worth was at an all-time high here, and now I need to make that money back, you're in big trouble once you start going down that rabbit hole. And I've seen that time and time again. It's people, like, keeping the money is a significant issue.
Oh yeah. I had a friend of mine in 2017 who I went to high school with, so he knows me in real life, and he knows that I trade crypto specifically. And he ran up like 10K into like 1.1 mil by buying Dogecoin. And that happened in like the span of like 3 or 4 months or something. I remember him.
Holy shit.
Yeah, man, his ego got the best of him. He's honestly truly a nice guy, but man, he, was very rude to me in this moment. I'll never forget it. He said something along the lines of like, doesn't that make you feel bad that I just came in a couple months, I've just drastically outperformed you? And asked me what he's doing today. He hasn't kept any of that. He's still working, his 9 to 5, and, his life hasn't changed. He hasn't paid off anything. Right? He still has student loans. So yeah, got absolutely nothing from it. So.
Yeah, I think being humble is so important, man. I think you will get humbled if you don't learn to be humble, and I've learned that outside of trading. If I've had my fair share of struggles outside of trading, so I learned that for the most part, outside of the realm of trading before I started trading, and that's like the biggest thing that has benefited me tremendously, and it sounds like the same for you.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so I wanted to shift gears a little bit and talk about leverage. You talked about leverage recently too, and I think you talked about spot versus trading spot versus trading leverage. And first of all, I want to, through you, provide listeners with education regarding leverage and path dependency. It seems like people are largely mistaken regarding the actual use of leverage
Oh
in
man, it
terms of
drives me
containing
crazy.
exposure. Yeah, like can you please shed a little bit of light on that?
Yeah, it truly is a shame that this community, ever since I joined, has continued to regurgitate the same thing over and over and over, which is don't use leverage, stay away from leverage, stay away from leverage. The issue is not that you need to stay away from leverage. The issue is you don't understand why leverage exists. Leverage exists because a very long time ago, because crypto is not the creator of leverage, right? Leverage has always been a thing in traditional markets. Leverage exists because exchanges wanted to onboard money, right? So retail money, hey, come and trade on our exchange. You deposit this amount, and then right, you can buy and sell and whatever. Well, people were not comfortable with depositing their money on a brand new exchange that doesn't have any reputation because it's brand new. So they said, okay, well, what can we do to get people to actually deposit their money? Oh, let's let them use 10x leverage. So that way they're only risking 1/10 of their net worth or whatever they want to deposit. They can use 10x leverage and they can trade on our exchange and give us volume and whatever, and create fees for us and this and that, um, so that we can actually benefit and then develop a reputation, and then more people will want to deposit money because there's more volume and there's more participants, and that kind of snowballs into something, right? So that's the reason leverage exists. It is the greatest counterparty risk, and is the greatest tool that you have available to you, especially as a crypto trader. If FTX in 2022 hasn't proved that to you, then I don't know what will, right? So leverage is the only reason why I don't have an FTX horror story for
Right.
you. So man, it's that, and you have to utilize that to your advantage. And the whole spot versus leverage thing, it was just you know, it was just I was poking the bear that is crypto Twitter. I wanted to poke some people's brains and make
Yeah.
them think a certain way.
Yeah.
It's really just that. But the point that I was trying to make was people love to say that spot trading is so much easier than leverage trading, and it's like, why though? Why is it easier? It doesn't make any sense. You're doing the exact same, it's the same action, it's the same market, you most of the time it's the same asset, it's the same trader, it's the same concept, it's the same idea. Why is it easier? And it's like, oh well, when you put it like that, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. So either A, you don't understand how to use leverage appropriately. You don't understand that it's not for you to take degenerate, gamble risks and play with money that you don't actually have. It doesn't exist for that reason. Or B, it's that when you look at your P&L, like me, you're a pansy and you want a market close, right? And you're like, oh my God, green, monkey neuron brain activate, me like
Yeah.
green, market close,
Yeah.
right? And then you
Yeah.
shoot yourself in the foot, or you see drawdown, you're like, wow, red, me no like red, market
Yeah.
close. And then it's like, well,
Right.
it just reversed, have fun staying poor. So why is it so much easier then? It doesn't really make a lot of sense. And then people are like, oh, because funding fees. And it's like, okay, yeah, I get it, right? There's obviously a lot of benefits to trading spot over leverage, but I was just trying to poke the bear and get people
Yeah.
thinking a
Yeah.
certain way, because it's a stigma and it just gets passed around. And now you have, gurus and the same people who are actually trying to educate and, have, good intentions and whatnot, regurgitating the same useless information. It's like, dude, come on.
So true, man. It's so true. It's like like the crux of the problem is people don't fucking like take the time to understand, right? It's like you said, like they don't know what a maker or taker is. Like why does price move? Like, it's surprising to me when I talk to a few people who've been trading for a little bit, and obviously they haven't completely gotten liquidated, but they don't know like basics. Why does leverage exist? What's the
Yeah.
purpose of leverage? It's like, okay, you shouldn't be trading if you don't know what these basic things are.
Yeah, 100%.
And the other thing you mentioned, hiding your P&L, and it's like you said, we alluded to it earlier. Everyone's different. So I had that issue when I first started trading, was actually not round tripping a lot of my profits. Right. So I would think, hey, like, I'm going to hit a home run on this, man. Let this thing go. Like, this is looking great. Right. And I would end up round tripping it, most of the profits. So my problem was in the other direction. So it's like we alluded to earlier. It's very individual in nature, and I think you need to spend the time to understand what your issues are. What are things that you need to work on.
Yeah.
And so along the same lines, there's, I don't know if you've read this book. It's called Best Loser Wins by Tom Hoogard. And he talks about, you have phenomenal book, man. I think for me, like it's a phenomenal. It talks about how important it is to be able to, for anyone listening, and if you haven't read it, I suggest you check it out. It talks about how important it is to be able to accept loss and not have your ego tied to the market. Along the same lines, what qualities do you think are key for a trader to be successful?
Patience. That is the main factor, man. Patience will get you so very far. And I always allude back to my experience in 2022. And Salsa actually brought up a good point, and I like to dwell on other people's points and hear them out, because this is how we develop our own thoughts and get past things. But he kind of brought up something that was like, people are making fun of him because he's trading the 1 minute chart, and he's constantly flip flopping his bias, and oh, he's long and targeting a $3,000 move, and then he cuts short and then flips short, and then right, he's sending out like 18 million trades at the time, a day. And he's like, okay, well, you guys are making fun of me because I'm taking so many trades on the 1 minute chart. You stare at the screen just as much as I do, and you only take one trade a week. Who's actually the real fool here? And it's like, well, honestly, he brings up a good point. Like, it comes down to who are you as a person. But in any kind of approach that you have to have patience. So when Salsa is trading the 1 minute chart, he's implementing his patience. It's just that the style that he has, his form of patience might be, I have to wait 30 minutes, right? For a good portion of 2022, I was really only averaging like 2 or 3 trades a month. I think probably most of those trades came in like 2 months out of the year, where things started to relief bounce pretty nicely and give me high time frame swing longs and whatnot. And a lot of the other times it was just like a petty little scalp trade here. Let me try and target a 15% move, whatever. Mm-hmm. But that's just my approach. Is I tend to focus more on the higher time frames because I'm a trend trader, and so when everything is kind of moving in tandem, every trend on every time frame is kind of moving in the same direction. That's why I'm allowed to come in and thrive. And at this time in 2022, people are thinking, well, why weren't you shorting? Why are you only taking 2 or 3 trades? My style and my philosophy is I don't short. I stopped shorting ever since March of 2020 happened. Because truthfully, right after March of 2020, I then tried to revenge short the relief rally. And then somewhere around 6 to 7 or 8K, I started saying, okay, this is stupid. I'm totally going against the point as to why I'm here. I've just, been a pleb this entire way through. Let me fix something. And I just stopped shorting. And then ever since then, I really haven't focused on shorts very heavily. So for a matter of the entire year, it was just me implementing my form of patience, for whatever seemed best to me. And so for all of 2022, because I have a sufficient amount of BTC and Ethereum and, some other altcoins in a ledger account that I just don't touch. And I play into that investor kind of mindset a little bit, where I'm, thinking on a 5, 10, 20-year outlook, maybe my kids are going to be able to retire off this stuff. Mm-hmm. I'm just watching that entire account draw down, right? BTC negative 80% in a year. So I'm just watching as that happens, and I'm really not pushing buttons all too much to kind of combat that. But suddenly, opportunities start to get presented, and I had my best trade of the year in like March or April of 2022, and Solana gave me like a 50% move in an 8-hour trade, and it was high conviction, and so I banger trade, and I had a couple different plays at the time that did just as well, made a bunch of money, and then back to doing nothing for like the next 4 months or whatever. right? And like another negative 50% drawdown BTC thereafter. And then just, resuming that. And by the time that we got to Q1 of 2023, when I kind of looked at it after all was said and done, my net worth was higher than what it was in November of 2021.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, wow, like I barely did anything this year. Like I only pushed buttons a couple times this year. It's just that when I pushed them, it was the right moment. I was able to bet big because it really is like a spiral, man. People don't have the opportunity to bid the FTX capitulation because they're too busy getting destroyed as the capitulation is happening, right? You don't have the ability to bid the breakout because you're too traumatized by the year-long drawdown from negative 80% prior. So you don't really have that. But I was able to detach from that because I'm just ebbing and flowing with whatever the market does. So I call it this is not an actual thing. I just made this up. I call it the the paradox of emotional attribution is what I call it. I have a video on this.
Okay, interesting.
But
we'll plug it.
It's the whole, the Wall Street cheat sheet. And it's like hope, fear, greed, euphoria, so I was saying, it doesn't really make a lot of sense because as other people are experiencing euphoria and everyone's calling it euphoria, someone is out there like, dude, I'm revenge shorting the whole, the whole rally. I've missed out. I, somehow managed to be involved in the space for the past 4 years. I knew what it was like to buy Bitcoin at $8 or whatever. And somehow I'm not making money right now. And you guys are saying that this is euphoria, right? And then somewhere else in the world, me, as everyone's like, oh, this is capitulation, this is fear, this is peak, whatever, doom, and this and that. And Bitcoin's trading at 15K. I'm like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. I've been stacking my wealth the past year, right? Sure, my ledger is down, but I don't really care about that for another 5, 10, 20 years, whatever. So that doesn't really count. I'm not experiencing fear and doom and capitulation and whatever. I'm euphoric because my purchasing power is 5 or 6x, right? So it's like it's a paradox of we attribute these emotions, but they don't have to actually be real. You absolutely can be euphoric when Bitcoin is trading at 18K and you're starting to enter into your swing longs or whatever and targeting a 50% move higher and have ample kind of ammo to be able to do that. And that was the case for me. So I don't subscribe to the idea that the market gets to dictate what kind of emotional state that I'm in. And yeah, man, it goes deep, but yeah, this is just kind of just to scratch the surface.
Yeah, no, I'm really glad you're getting into detailed answers. This is exactly what I'm looking to do on these episodes. And I think you alluded to like the importance of sitting on your hands, right? And that's like generic bullshit that it sounds like people throw around. Oh, just sit on your hands. That's the third move. Right. But the thing behind it is you need structure. It's extremely important, but there's a lot more to it, right? Being able to sit on your hands requires structure. And I like this, there's this quote in Trading in the Zone, and it goes something like, randomness is unstructured freedom without responsibility. And I believe that's extremely tied in with trading. Because trading you have the psychological tug of war. It's constant in nature, that brings out any internal strife that you may have. Like trading is such a mirror, which is why I love it, right? You don't get good sleep. You try to go trade, you'll get wrecked, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it could vary from person to person, right? What parameters affect their trading, but it just brings out anything bad in terms of like your mentality or anything that's going on in your life. So what are some actionable things that people can do to understand their psychology or understand that psychological tug of war? What would you suggest for anyone that's listening in to create that structure, to understand like how, when should I be sitting on my hands, or when should I be, what would you suggest?
So first of all, I would say sit down with yourself, and this sounds corny and cheesy, but honestly, sit down with yourself and think about what is the approach going to be like. I really did. I sat there with myself and I just kind of thought about it, and just kind of pondered on something like, do I even want to trade shorts anymore? Do they even interest me? Is it even in my best interest to short this market, or should I just kind of focus on, long biased only? And that's been a big thing for me, man. Like, I might call the top like I did for the BTC spot ETF, but I can tell you 100% guarantee I did not trade it. Right? I did not short it. And I'm perfectly okay with that because, again, that 2022 was able to show me that, like, I don't need to do that. I can still thrive. Q1 2023, my portfolio's the same, or higher than what it was peak bull market when BTC is, 69K and Justin Bieber still has his, Bored Ape as his Twitter profile picture, right? It's like, that's crazy to think about. And price is still, at that time, it's still negative 60% lower than where it was November 2021. So I was able to have that belief because I sat down with myself and I convinced myself that that was something that I wanted to do. And then I stuck with it. And then I watched it as it rewarded me. And then I got vindicated in that belief. And now I can adhere to it at my own free will. And I don't have to break from it. The market does not entice me into a short setup, right? And it doesn't happen. But it's because I gave myself the respect that I deserve. And I sat down with myself and really contemplated, how is it that I want to do something? And then I followed through. I think it's a shame that, and this goes for a lot of financial decisions, even just taking, a simple swing trade, or hey, do I want to buy the newest, hottest Ponzi coin, or like whatever, then, hey, everyone on crypto Twitter is talking about this, or right, whatever it may be. I think it's a shame that we don't give those decisions the time of day. We don't even give them 30 minutes a lot of the time. We just kind of act on impulse. And I always pertain it back to, if your significant other came home today from work and said, hey, I got this amazing job in Paris, right? And let's go move to Paris. And you're just like, Paris? That sounds cool. Wow, good food, right? Like, right. Like, man, like, I love the views. Like, Paris, that sounds amazing. Yeah, let's go. And then you think about it and you're like, wait, shit, that means that we have to sell the house. We have to liquidate a lot of our ownings. What are we going to do about our puppy? Wait, I have to find a new job. Wait, we're not going to be able to see our family. Hold on. Maybe let's not move to Paris, right? So if that's the case for a big decision like that, how come we don't even give ourselves 30 minutes for a big financial decision? Right? How come when, my crypto Twitter timeline is shilling a new coin that just dropped today, and I want to go ape into it because all my smart friends are shilling it, and it's the same people that were shilling Celestia, and Celestia's up, whatever, 700% or whatever, right? How come, and I did, how come I don't sit there and say, okay, is this something I actually even want to do? Do I want to add on this risk? Do I even want to be allocated to this coin? And I did. I sat there for 30 minutes and I just kind of thought about it, threw the ball around with my puppy, and I was like, you know what? It's worth the risk, right? And by all means, that coin is up 50% today. And it's not because the market rewarded me. It's because of the way that I'm approaching the market. In a balanced state of mind. I'm allowing myself to reap those rewards. And I'm allowing myself to accept the losses that come along with them. And this is all predetermined. I've already accounted for this preemptively. But the biggest thing that I can possibly say to anybody listening to this right now who really wants to get a hold of their own system and their own psychology, journal. Journal everything. For the past 4 years straight, and for the past year publicly, I've been journaling my thoughts on the market, but mostly primarily just BTC, because that's what I focus on, and that's the alpha to the market. Every single day. Every single day I journal. I just write a quick couple sentences, or maybe even a couple paragraphs, depending on what has happened that day. And I show and I screenshot and copy paste the charts, and I send it to myself in a Discord channel. And now the only difference is I don't do it to myself. I do it to a public Discord with like 2,000 people in it. And, they get to tag along with me and see my thoughts, and they actually get value from it. It's really amazing. Right. But I'm still just doing the same thing that I've been doing for the past 4 years. I'm just journaling my thoughts on the market every single day. And then what that does is, I always relate this back to, I have a lot of relating back to real life in kiddish ways, and my brain is puny, so I need like puny ways to actually be able to relate to things. But I always pertain this back in like in high school when, the cute girl in class, in your math class, is like, hey, I don't know how you got that answer. Can you please explain it to me? And you have to show her, the solution and the equation and how you came to the answer that you did. And then when it comes time for the test, you remember how to do that. And you never get that answer wrong because you remember exactly the moment where you were explaining it to that cute girl in your math class. And I hope my fiance is not listening to this right now. but yeah, you really do. And being the teacher to yourself and forcing yourself to break it down in such a way to where anyone could understand it allowed you to understand it to a deeper extent as well. And then so it came time for the test, you understood it to a very deep extent and you aced that question. So it's the same thing in markets, man. You just journal, you write everything out. Every thought that you have on the market, every which way, key levels, what your bias is, what to watch out for, all that stuff. You just write it down and portray it in such a way to where anyone could read it and understand it, even someone who doesn't know anything about markets. And then you just do that for a very long period of time, and you start to catch little things about yourself and about markets and the way that you're trading in your own system. And it really is. It's very, very valuable. So
I'm taking a pause because there's so many gems you dropped there. We can go down so many different rabbit holes here. Holy shit. I think, so the first thing, right, and I'm sure you've, I'm 100% sure you probably read this, the Thinking Fast and Slow book.
System love 1 and that System book, 2 man. Thinking. I love it. By the way, let me front run you. I read that book before, and then a good friend of mine who was at one point number 1 on Binance P&L leaderboards messaged me and said, hey, I'm reading Thinking Fast and Slow. Have you ever read it before? And I said, yeah, I have. He said, dude, it's a great book. You should reread it. And I reread it. So I've now read it twice. And I hate reading. I don't even like reading. I read it twice because the number 1 guy on Binance leaderboard recommended it to me. Yeah. So great. It has nothing to do with markets, but anyone who really wants a good kind of understanding about psychology, it is an amazing book. But yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you shared that because it's like you said, it doesn't have to do with markets, but it's what we alluded to earlier. It's about self-mastery, right? And so that's what I'm always thinking about is how can I optimize the way I think and what can I do? It's a little nuances you mentioned. So you mentioned journaling, right? And I've done like almost 10 of these and I've had like 7 or 8 traders on here at this point. And that's the common theme. So I'm just trying to point that out to the audience, how important it is to journal. And you can go get really nuanced with it. Like for me, I was tracking my sleep through a device. I still do this. I still track my sleep. What did I eat? How did it impact my sleep? How did it impact my trading? I keep track of all these things. And it depends on you how detailed you want to get with it. For me, it's just something that I was extremely obsessive about and still am. So I'm really nuanced in my understanding of how I operate. And it's what you brought up as well is journal everything, journal your ideas, how your performance looks like, and you can get really nuanced with it. You can get pretty detailed with it. But again, that's up to your discretion to figure out how detailed you need to get with it in order to get value out of it.
For sure. Yeah. I even have some like just personal rules that I implement as well. And one of the main ones is I won't trade if I'm tired. I just won't do it because every trader that I know has a story about a silly little mistake where they added an extra 0 or something. I have one. Yep. When FTX and I was trading on FTX, I was like low on sleep, running off of like 3 or 4 hours or something, and I was trying to run up like the Gen account. I actually managed to run it up like $500 to like 10K or something. This was a byproduct of the market environment we were in, not because of how skilled I am as a trader. But at some point, my account was worth like $8,000 or something, and FTX had just added a slider position bar. I remember this so clearly. They had just added a position sizing bar, so you could just slide the bar, and whatever leverage size you were on, it would just go along with it, proportional. However, far to the right you slid the bar, and my thumb slipped, and it slid the bar way far to the right, and I entered in, and immediately, as soon as I entered in, I was down on the trade for like $2,000 or something within like the same minute that I had entered. And it was like, dude, what just happened? I was like, this is so stupid. And then I have to market close that position and pay another $200 in fees or like whatever the hell. I'm like, oh my God. So I never trade tired again. But yeah,
Bro,
just
it's happened to me
personal
so many
rules.
times where I've left open a position, didn't even realize it was still up. Like, like it's,
Yeah.
I think these are just things that people have to go through.
Yeah.
Like these are just lessons you have to learn. But yeah, it goes back to, for me, like, so I'm just gonna really quickly go over this, but I have an Aura ring that I've used for like a couple of years now, and it's there's sometimes where you get the 7-8 hours of sleep, but your REM sleep is low, or like for some reason you
Mm.
actually aren't getting the sleep that you think you're getting, right? And so those are like these are the kind of things that I've like try to dig into for myself that have benefited me tremendously. But just to shift gears a little bit, there's something you touched upon in terms of how everyone's thinking, like that system one thinking. And there's a quote by Nietzsche. It goes like he who cannot obey himself will be commanded. So what I wanted to talk to you about was there's this discussion about being a contrarian, like being this force. Oh, everyone's talking about Bitcoin's gonna go to. I'm just throwing out an example. Bitcoin's gonna go to $50,000, so that means I need to short, or that means it's gonna go in the other direction. Or everyone's saying it's going to go down, that means it's going to go up. So what is your thought process on that?
Man, I could not be
Yeah, there
any
we go.
polar opposite to being a contrarian. I am a dude. If the crowd is hyping up something and the trend is this, I'm in, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna ride that until it breaks. Right? Whether the trend is whatever you're talking about. Whether we're talking about fidget spinners is a trend for a little bit, and for 3 months there, it was like the hottest thing. Everyone wanted them, and then it dies out, and whoever was early to the fidget spinner game and selling fidget spinners early and managed to get rid of their inventory did incredibly well, and it didn't matter by the time that they weren't a fad anymore. um, but the whole way that I'm sorry, the whole time along the way, you always have those boomers or whoever is like, this fidget spinner thing, this is stupid,
Yeah.
right? And they're like, well, yeah, it was stupid, but it lasted for 3 months and it was a
Yep.
crazy kind of thing. And you could have, really capitalized on that opportunity. So I think about trends the same way, man. Is it stupid? Yeah. Does it make sense that Bitcoin goes from $3,000 to 64,000 in the span of what, like 8 months or something ridiculous? No, it doesn't make sense that that happened, but it did. And that's the reason why you're here. And I find that to be the most ironic thing,
Yeah.
is that that's the
Absolutely.
reason we're all here. Literally every
Yep.
single one of you included, myself included, every single person
100%.
watching this
100%.
and reading or listening to this. That's why you're here, man. You're here for the stupid shit that doesn't make any sense, but it just keeps going up and it just keeps going, or it just keeps going down, like regardless, right? That's why we're here. We have to capitalize on that stuff. And you 100% cannot thrive in that condition if you are a contrarian. And so that means, hey, every time we break out of a range, you're going to call deviation. Nope, it's not actually a breakout, it's a deviation. Well, it looks like a breakout, it smells like a breakout, it trades like a breakout, market structure is a higher high, it looks like an uptrend, right? Trades like an uptrend, but you're calling it a deviation. Okay, cool. And then when it deviates and it falls back inside of the range and it wasn't a breakout, right? And it wasn't an uptrend and it shifted market structure bearish again or whatever, when it does all those things, you're going to make sure that you come back to me and say, Mercury, you are an idiot because you said it would continue higher. I said it was a deviation. I was right. Haha. Cool. Good on you. What about the next time around, right? The next time it looks like a breakout, trades like a breakout, smells like a breakout, and it actually is a breakout. And then we continue higher as a breakout implies, and we continue uptrending as an uptrend implies. Let me know how you're doing, right? And it's like, it's that we have to humble ourselves, man. We have to allow the market. If the market's showing you something, and it's very simple, and I always break it down to say, like, even a 4-year-old knows which way the chart is headed at any given time, and they know that answer within 4 seconds of looking at the chart. I promise.
Yeah.
I have a little cousin who's 3 years
Yep.
old, and I swear if I go show you any chart in the market on any time frame, they are going to be able to tell me that one's headed up, that one's going down, that one's headed sideways, that one's going up
Yep.
within 4 seconds of looking at the chart. Just allow it to play through. And if the market quote unquote lies to you, we're uptrending and we uptrend for 3 months and 80%, and then finally the trend breaks and you only start to recognize, hey, this is actually an uptrend at, $49,000 Bitcoin, the market lies to you, adapt. Start to take in, okay, what is it saying now? Right? Is it headed to the bottom right corner? Okay, maybe I should just kind of, throw my arms up and say, oh, it's headed to the bottom right corner. It's cool to be a contrarian when it's cool to be a contrarian. And the way that I think about this, and George Soros has an amazing quote. He says something along the lines of, and if I believe a trend has played out to excess, I may probe against it.
Mm-hmm.
I think about that and I'm like, wow, like you just dropped some bars on my head, right? Like,
yeah, that's bars,
like,
man.
Man, it's very wise to think that way. I didn't have the ability to buy the March of 2020 dip. You know who did? My uncle who hates Bitcoin. Right? It's like, why? Because he wasn't exposed. Well, obviously, that's a given. He hates Bitcoin. But at $4,000 Bitcoin, he's like, oh, I don't know what this thing is. It's a Ponzi, but I'm going to throw some money at it. Right? So he was a winner. Meanwhile, I dedicate my entire life to this thing, grinding 12 to 14 hours a day. I'm a loser. I can't buy the dip. Why? Because I was too busy counter trading the trend, hoping and praying that the market would reverse and, extend the amount of time that I'm practicing bad habits. And I just wasn't able to adhere to the fact that the market was going down. Every part of me knew that the market was going down. And nothing changed. The market just kept going down. And then what happens? It spirals you into that loss, now leads into a bigger loss, now leads into a bigger loss, right? So you have to break that pattern at some point. I wasn't able to buy the dip of March 2020 because I was the dude too busy neglecting the fact that the market was going down into March of 2020. And that was the issue. So it's a matter of curing the cause and not trying to treat the symptoms. And when you want to be a contrarian, you have to understand. And here's what I want to get across to the reader or the listener. I'm not saying you're not allowed to be a contrarian. I'm saying if you're going to be a contrarian, you have to acknowledge it. You have to know that what you're doing is low probability. You are fighting the herd and you are stepping in front of the train. And I would imagine if you are stepping in front of the train and you know that you're stepping in front of a train, you're going to trade it as such, right? You're not going to bet the house. You're not going to risk doom. You're not going to bet the same way that you would on a high conviction kind of play because you fully understand that what you're doing is the contrarian take. That's the issue. The issue is not whether or not you're a contrarian, you're a subscriber to trends. That's not the point. The point is have the right kind of approach from a foundational standpoint to the approach that you're taking mentally. And so if that's the case, then that should mean that your position sizing and the way that your portfolio is set up and all these other variables should move in kind of a harmonious kind of manner with the mindset that you're applying, which is a contrarian kind of take, right? You probe against the trend if you believe that, we're starting to get to that excess point. You don't bet the house and all in on the first, major dip. Oh, this is probably it. And then it goes negative 20% lower. And you actually were right. That was the bottom. It's just that the difference between the 2 days was negative 20%. So were you holding on to that position for that negative 20%? And you'll find that the answer is probably no, because you took the wrong approach in tandem with the mindset that you were trying to apply.
Yeah, that's extremely well put. And my 2 cents on it is that, there's people who are trying to be contrarian. It's forced, right? And I really think that, you should develop your own thought process. And, if the way you do things in your system, and, how you have your system formulated indicates that, okay, now things are going in the other direction. That's one thing. But then just basing it off of like, oh, everyone's predicting this, so it's going to go in the other direction. It just doesn't make any sense, right? And the other thing I wanted to talk about was you brought up George Soros and his I was reading this book called The Alchemy of Finance a while back, and he brings up this concept from John Maynard Keynes, where he basically refers to the stock market. He compares the stock market to a beauty contest, where the winner isn't the most beautiful contestant, but the one who the greatest number of people consider beautiful. And I think that goes over a lot of people's heads. It's like, okay, what if everyone's what matters is what the greatest number of people consider beautiful, right? And being able to think in that frame, you know, I mean, you're a trend follower, so you know, that's essentially what you're doing in one form or another.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so along the same lines, what I wanted to talk to you about was, so stoicism, right, is often misinterpreted as not feeling emotions, right, or aiming to basically become emotionless. While it's quite the contrary. It's being able to feel your emotions and see them for what they are and react in a logical manner. There's this like in Buddhism, there's like this parable. It's called the two arrows, and it talks about, hey, the first arrow can't be controlled, right? But the second one is self-inflicted due to a reaction based on emotion. And I want to talk to you about that a little bit. What you think about that in terms of like feeling emotion and seeing them for what they are. Again, it goes back to the system 1 and system 2 thinking, right? At system 1, you can't prevent that. You know, you're going to feel the pain, right? Yeah. You can't just be emotionless. You're going to feel the pain. But what matters is how you react to it. What's your take on that?
Man, it's heavy embedded in trading psychology. It really is. You know, and how you're kind of thinking about it is system 1, system 2. System 1 is the market. And system 2 is your reaction to what the market did. You know, I'm not going to sit here and bullshit anybody and say, oh, when I feel a loss or when I take a loss, I don't feel it. Right? I feel it, but I only feel it for all of a couple minutes. And then I'm able to say, you know what, it's par for the course. It is what it is. I still win long term. And then I write it off and then it doesn't affect me. But of course I feel it, you know, and so I just summarize it to say, I don't feel losses. You know, losses don't affect me because they really only affect me for those couple minutes. And then I'm able to hone in my emotional maturity. You call it stoicism. I call it emotional maturity. I just have a really good understanding for myself, and I understand the way that my brain ticks, and I'm able to understand the emotions that are kind of coming across and trying to affect me. And it really has gotten to the point where I see this in my day-to-day life now. Markets change you, man. At least if you are winning in markets, that must mean that you're approaching with the correct kind of mindset, which happens to be why I want to think why when we talk about trading psychology or I go back and forth with you, you're kind of reiterating the same thoughts and you're going, wow, yeah, I you know, subscribe to the same things that you said. This is such an amazing conversation because we both feel it. We both experienced it before and we both kind of know where that, you know, aligns. So if you're winning in markets, you're probably, you know, trekking down the same path in terms of like mindset and emotional journey as anyone else who's winning in markets. And then what that tends to do is it impacts your day-to-day life. And I see this all the time, man. 100%. I don't get mad at video games anymore, right? Yeah. I play video games with my buddies and, you know, we'll be playing and many years ago, we would have been all getting mad at each other and calling each other names and, oh, you suck and you screwed up and you're the reason we lost this game. And now I just play and, you know, they might get angry or whatever, but I don't feed into it because I'm just, you know, I'm here to have a good time. Video games don't bother me. I know what it's like to take this number loss and right. I know what it's like to put on a trade and get stopped out in the same hourly candlestick. Like you can't, a video game is not going to bother me. Right. Or another example, we'll be stuck in traffic and my fiance is the person driving and, you know, it's a 30-minute drive, but it takes us an hour and a half to get there. She's, you know, cussing people out and so irritated and this person just cut me off. Let me honk the horn. I'm like, it is what it is, right? It's like, it's an extra hour. It's whatever, right? You know, you go to a doctor's appointment, the doctor doesn't show up for another 45 minutes. Well, my appointment was 45 minutes ago, doctor. Why aren't you here now? Right? You're going to talk to me for 5 minutes and then I'm going to leave and you're going to charge me like a couple $100 for this 5-minute conversation. What the hell? It doesn't bother me. You know, I can find something else to do. It's what it is. But it's that it really is. You have to fall into that mindset of emotional maturity. And that's what I call it. But you call it stoicism. And the only thing I know about stoicism is I read Marcus Aurelius' book, Meditations. And that's it.
Yeah. No, and all these things you're talking about fit actually surprisingly fit really well into Stoicism. And I'm not the kind of person to follow like one school of thought, just, yeah, I have my name Stoic just because I like that school of thought. But, I don't fully subscribe to one thing or another. I basically, like you said, I do the same thing where I figure out what works for me. Right. And so it's funny that we're relating on so many things here, how trading relates to real life. And I found myself, there's a significant benefit in the sense that I've realized that now, in terms of assigning probabilities, weighing risk versus reward for decisions, we do that on a daily basis subconsciously without really thinking about it, right? We think about, okay, like for example, all right, I missed my workout in the morning, but if I go in the evening, my sleep will get affected, and that is a net negative for the next day, right? Just a stupid example, but I found myself doing that a lot more consciously, especially since I've been trading for a while, and it's benefited me tremendously. Now, and like you said, like things, small things don't bother me at all. It's like, all right. I'm always surprised by the magnitude of things that upset people, but they don't affect me. They really don't, and so I relate with you on that 100%.
Yeah.
All right, so moving on. Let's talk a little bit of markets. We've been at it for an hour and 20 minutes, and time has just flown by.
All right.
Let's move on a little bit to markets, right? So, what is your outlook in terms of short term, the next few weeks, and long term? Do you even think about that? I know people view markets differently, but what's your current outlook in terms of the next few weeks and maybe the long term in terms of where Bitcoin is headed, or any general thoughts?
Yeah, I want to front run myself and kind of just say that while I do have my own speculative thoughts, I always have my own speculative thoughts in the market, right? I always, in my own head, I'm kind of thinking, where do I think this goes? And, what do I think happens? But truthfully, honestly, what am I actually going to trade is my system. So whatever my system is doing, I'm going to be very objective about it.
Exactly.
Just like the 4-year-old, if the 4-year-old knows we're uptrending, I better damn well know that we're uptrending too, and I better trade it as such. It's just not an excuse for me to not do that. So,
right.
So I have my own thoughts, but I'm always going to trade and respect my system because that's what got me here, and that is the true alpha: is the system and the psychology that goes along with it, not my arbitrary thoughts on the market. But my thoughts are the spot ETF was a sell the news. And so the way that I think about it, it's not actually sell the news, because to me, sell the news means we're buying, and then as soon as the announcement comes out, it's actually red candle. That's not really what happened. We got 50% higher first, which is what I thought would happen. I said, very, very immediate term. As soon as that announcement hits, initial green candlesticks. And then right after the announcement, and somebody that I know actually gave me this quote, and I kind of pertained it back to the ETF, was people tend to underestimate their ability. I'm sorry. People tend to overestimate their abilities in the short term and underestimate them in the long term. And I thought that was a beautiful quote. And I kind of think about the spot ETF, and I pertained it back to that. And I said, I think people are going to be very underwhelmed by what happens in the short term and overwhelmed by what happens in the long term, right? And you can't think big enough. BlackRock, the reality is BlackRock is here to come buy our bags, right? The biggest asset manager in the world. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're here to just throw billions and billions of dollars at Bitcoin the same week that the ETF goes live, right? So, and that's not what happened. So that was my thoughts, and that continues to be my thoughts moving forward. I'm thinking still the next couple of weeks, maybe I really just think daunting, boring, sideways. And if I'm right on that, then my conviction in the idea of downside from here gets bigger for whatever reason that is going in my head, for whatever reason I'm attributing that to, just because of I'm going based off of vibes. I've been trading markets for 7 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, and people see it in my free Discord. I give objective thoughts on the market, regardless of what my thoughts are. I thought the spot ETF would be a top, but I clearly stated that my system did not agree until Bitcoin broke back below 45K for all my technical reasons. And so at 45K, then I started to message people and say, hey, you know, my system and my thoughts are starting to move in tandem with each other. And then we got that much deeper pullback, much deeper than anything we've seen in the past 3 months. So far, so good. That was right. And since then, we've relief bounced and, you know, gone sideways. My thoughts are that if this is going to be a top, I think that people usually anticipate the idea of a top means that we're not going to trade anywhere near that region immediately, right? We immediately sell off and we accelerate and everything goes down negative 50%. And it's like, that's not really what I have in mind. It's most of the time, bar the exception of like a blow off top where the rally gets incredibly like exacerbated. Most times you get that right shoulder to sell into. So my belief is that we're getting that right now as you and I are recording this. In the meantime, I'm swinging shitcoins, right? There are lots of altcoins in the market right now that are strong trenders. And the thing about me is I made probably 70 to 80% of my wealth up until 2023 by trading Bitcoin. So Bitcoin was the primary asset, and that was the really only thing that I was able to kind of scale my conviction in terms of bets, right, and position sizes. I wasn't comfortable doing that on, you know, an altcoin. I would maybe be able to do it on Ethereum if it felt very right, but most of the time it's just Bitcoin. So that really accounted for a large portion of the wealth that I've been able to generate. Well, I have not traded Bitcoin once since probably July of 2023. And my portfolio has probably doubled in that time. So that is no longer true anymore. It is not to the point where most of my wealth has come from Bitcoin. And in that very short period of time, there were so many opportunities in this market. I mean, for God's sakes, Solana, after breaking out, a 50% move to get outside of a 10-month range. After it breaks out of that 10-month range, after already being up 50% in the past week, goes from $25 to $120, right? Opportunity is so unbelievably abundant, and it's not just Bitcoin. And I had a tendency to focus on Bitcoin. If you do join my free Discord and watch my daily updates, his primary focus is going to be on Bitcoin. But that's honestly, truly just because I don't have the time of the day to be able to sit here and discuss every altcoin that's catching my eyes. I'm not going to do that, especially not for free, right?
Exactly.
So yeah, but really that is where the opportunity is for me at the moment. Something like Sui, and I put out a tweet, something along the lines of Sui when it was trading, you know, 40% lower than wherever it is right now. Like, hey, I see that you guys are freaking out over a 5% bounce on the orange coin that is clearly losing momentum on high time frames and, you know, at best maybe ranging. But here's this coin, Sui, which is threatening price discovery, right? Let me go trade Sui. And Sui's up, you know, 15% on the day. And I think since I said that, Sui is up an additional 30% since then. So that's really where my focus is. I'm going to try and make as much money as I can on these altcoins that are strong trenders and fit beautifully within my system. And I'm going to continue to neglect whatever Bitcoin is doing as long as there's not a setup that's quote unquote good enough for me, because I get to decide when I want to play, because it's not poker. There's no ante going around the table. If I don't want to take a trade on Bitcoin, I don't have to take a trade on Bitcoin. If I would prefer to go, you know, justify exposure elsewhere for whatever reason, be it, you know, better trend, cleaner price action, outperformer, whatever it may be, I can absolutely go and do that. And that's been the strategy since July of 2023. And man, it's been a killer strategy, you know, on top of the world right now. So, and it continues to be the case, and that will be the outlook moving forward.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your detailed thoughts. And two questions along the same line. So one, would you like to share any coins you have your eyes on currently? And two, a lot of people trade alts based on Bitcoin. Do you do the same, or do you just look at the alts and, you know, whatever setup there is based on your system and trade those?
For coins that I'm watching, I will just give you so here's my watch list at the moment. Watch list at the moment is Sol, Sui, Sei, Ethereum Classic, TIA, INJ, Blur, RNDR, and that has been the case since last Friday. So I don't know if I should say this, but I have a private Discord, including my free Discord.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I have a private Discord, and people just use my ref link to support me, and then that keeps the private Discord going. And in there, I do a Friday altcoins watch list every single Friday. Well, yeah, duh. But I do live streams in there. So every single Friday, I go through live with everybody, and we say, hey, let's scan through the entire market. And again, it takes me less than 4 seconds to analyze each chart. I just hit spacebar and go to the next. So I literally scan through the entire market and find coins that are interesting to me. We list them out in a watch list, and then I give my quick, summary kind of thoughts on them, what regions I'm watching, what my setup would look like, all this and that, whatever. And, key levels, this, that, and the other. And yeah, so at the moment, that is my watch list, those 8 coins. For trading altcoins and using Bitcoin to trade altcoins, I think it's a really bad habit. So, man, it's so incredibly discretionary, because there's going to be the one guy who's like, no, if Bitcoin's doing this, then you should exit altcoin positions, or you should do this, or you should do that. It's like, dude, but you don't understand. You're a hedge fund manager, and you manage, millions and millions of dollars, and you've been trading crypto for, since crypto existed, and we're not you, right? It's like you have that, innate nature, and you're just built different. We're not you. I find that most times it's probably going to be applicable to most people. You shoot yourself in the foot by over-analyzing your altcoin trade because of whatever Bitcoin's doing. And I see this all the time, man. I see it all the time, especially in my Discords. Hey, I'm in this trade and it's up 40% and this coin is running hot, but Bitcoin kind of looks like shit. I might cut it. And then you cut the trade and it keeps running. And, it doubles up from there. And you're like, oh, shit, I just fumbled generational wealth because of, Bitcoin pulled back -2%. And then this altcoin put in a higher low and then immediately retraced the rally, or retraced the drop. So I always, and I stress this so much, I always focus on the individual chart itself. And then I tie in the secondary. Hey, what is Bitcoin doing? Right. So, and it's very general. It might be something like Bitcoin's in a range. So maybe, we have some fun to play on altcoins in the meantime, right? Maybe it allows altcoins to trend, or Bitcoin is currently breaking out of a key level. So maybe my altcoins are going to start to see a pullback because people are, going to rotate that capital or whatever, go back to the king. It's very general, but I'm always going to manage and execute the trade based off of what that specific chart is doing, and pertaining it back to my system.
Yeah, awesome. I'm so glad you shared that. And it's funny, we have the same watch list besides Ethereum Classic, so I'll have to go take a look at Ethereum Classic.
Hey man, I've been discussing it. It's actually breaking out of a really high time frame range. That's what caught my interest. And I had a particular level in mind, and I set bids on that level, and then it bounced. I think it's currently trading back at that level. I've taken partial profits. I do believe if it gets stopped out, I still lose money. But yeah, it bounced so far. It looks pretty good in my opinion.
Nice. Take a look at that. And then just to pivot a little bit, do you care about macro at all, or do you keep an eye on global economy at all, or pretend to make sense of any of it, or do you have any thoughts on where the economy is headed as a whole? I mean, perfectly fine if you don't. Not a lot of people do. Some people don't give a fuck. So
yeah,
I like to ask.
I'm one of those people who I don't give a fuck. Truthfully, whatever's happening in the macro world or the economy, it's going to be reflected in the markets. And as long as I'm always in tandem with whatever the market is doing, I will be in tandem with your macro thoughts or whatever as well. A good example of this is Pentoshi took on a macro kind of like put on his macro suit and was like, big boy, like, hey, like rate hikes and this and that, whatever, back in like January of 2022 or something. Well, my system is telling me number go down, bottom right corner. So for all of 2022, Pentoshi and I are on the same exact, wavelength, but for two totally different reasons, right? He had the speculative, hey, I'm going to put my big brain, thinking cap on, and, dig into this side of the world and apply these, narratives and whatnot. And I was, well, we're below this stupid little green and blue line and we're making lower lows and lower highs. So maybe number is going to keep going down. And look at that. We're both right. And then, when that narrative goes away and he starts to detach from it, the market starts to shift bullish, and it's like, oh wait, now we're above those stupid little green and blue lines. We're heading to the top right corner, and we're both right again. And so, the market is the greatest arbiter of truth. So I don't really have a reason to dive out and speculate on narratives or whatever, unless I'm dabbling, right? Unless I'm probing against the trend or whatever it may be.
Yeah, and I think this theme has been predominant throughout our entire discussion. But Magus said something that was great, and I'm paraphrasing it, but he said something along the lines of stop pretending to play 5D chess and just play checkers. Like a lot of people overcomplicate the fuck out of everything. Like they try to pretend they're geniuses. Absolutely. Just simplify it, man. Cut all the fat. Like cut all the fat out. Stop pretending to be a genius.
I think you read my thread that I made about why narratives are stupid.
Yes,
did you read that?
I did. I absolutely did. It was great. Phenomenal thread, actually.
I appreciate that. I talk about how, and this is the greatest example I could ever possibly give. Speaking of Ethereum Classic, back in 2021, Ethereum Classic was trading at, I don't want to butcher this, I want to say it was trading at like $20 or something. And then it skyrocketed. It went like 500% higher. So it trades at like $100 or whatever in the span of like a couple weeks. And the whole narrative, was, okay, US retail is here to buy our bags. And man, oh man, when they log into their Coinbase and their Robinhood accounts, and Coinbase and Robinhood are number 1 and number 2 on the App Store, right? Yeah. So everyone is buying or downloading these apps, throwing money and throwing their COVID stimulus or whatever at crypto to gamble. And they're going to see Ethereum, $4,000, and they're going to see Ethereum Classic, $20. And which one are they going to buy? They're going to feel a whole lot better if they buy a bunch of Ethereum Classic as opposed to buying Ethereum. It's like, okay, so we're playing into the unit bias of crypto retail participants, US retail. They're here to buy our bags. They're going to have unit bias. They're going to buy Ethereum Classic. Makes sense, right? A simple narrative to subscribe to. Well, I don't remember the numbers exactly, but it was something like $10 billion of volume was being done on a Korean exchange, which is Upbit. And then the second highest was Binance, which had already gotten rid of US users, right? And made sure that like geolocation block or whatever, they got rid of all of them. And Binance was like 7 billion. And then when you keep going down that ladder, and it got to the point where Coinbase was like 1 billion. So it didn't make sense, right? And volume doesn't necessarily mean net inflows, but we can kind of infer that because this volume is so minuscule in comparison to what's happening on these other exchanges, the US retail narrative is not really the driving factor here. And the thing that blows my mind about this example is that it's statistics, right? It's numbers, it's volume. You cannot debate this. You can argue, oh, it's maybe wash trading, but it seems kind of like a steep hill that you're trying to fight that argument, right? So if people have the ability to get numbers wrong, factual data wrong, way fucking off, could not be farther from the truth, right? Actually, it was Korean retail here to buy our bags, right? Not US. So if that's the case, then how do I think about more speculative narratives like, oh, Grayscale's selling their Bitcoin? Like, does that have to be the narrative? Is that necessarily why Bitcoin is going down? No, not really, right? Because what happened? Grayscale continued to sell their Bitcoin, but Bitcoin bounced 15%. What happened? But they're still selling. But your narrative is still applicable. But now the market's doing something different. So you just don't care about it anymore. Now suddenly, the memes have died down a little bit. Oh, now we don't hate Barry as much, right?
Yeah.
It's like price action dictated the narrative. So regardless of whatever your narrative is, you could tell me, oh, Jerome Powell said this in his latest speech, and he's very blah, 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 hawkish and dovish and this and that and blah, blah, blah. And here are the numbers to go, and represent this narrative. And right, big boy thinking cap on 150 IQ narrative. Or you could tell me, I don't know, there's a koala stuck in a tree somewhere in Australia, and for whatever reason, that's really bearish to me. And as long as number is going down and we're making lower lows and lower highs and we're breaking key levels and whatever, I believe you. So that's my take on narrative, right? It's like, 100%. And yeah.
Yeah, like price is an advertising mechanism, right? So then you go back and be like, okay, well, this is why it's moving up and this is why it's making higher lows. And when it's going low, you could fit some other narrative to, why price is going down.
Exactly.
Right. So but that was a phenomenal thread. So anyone listening, you've probably read the thread, but if you haven't, go check it out. I don't know if you have like a highlight section but just look it up.
I should add it. I should.
Yeah, definitely add it. I found it to be useful. So because I have I have some long threads.
Yeah, I don't utilize that.
So what I do is the highlight section is nice. I just throw them in there for anything that's useful and any longer threads. But
I'll have to do that.
Yeah, definitely check it out. So I feel like I know what your answer will be on this, but what I need to ask is, there's this entire thought process behind, okay, well, the suits are coming in and this is the last cycle in crypto where you can make it big. And the market's going to become muted. What is your take on that? And if you think it will become muted, how quick or gradual will that process be? I mean, it's a very speculative discussion, but I always like to ask.
So I don't think there's a debate of whether or not it's going to get muted. I think it is absolutely 100% going to get muted. But it's not necessarily going to be mute. It's just going to be lower volume. So it's like, the way that I'm thinking about this is, of course, it's going to be harder to get, more exponential kinds of gains, a 20x, a 50x, 100x, when market caps are higher and there's more money that is necessary, higher monetary number that is necessary to actually double up that price. Now, market caps are something of a meme because that's not actually, true. It's truly liquidity, but it's a general kind of rough estimate, and it gives you a good gist of, what it takes to move that asset. So, of course, that's going to happen, but does that necessarily mean that, after the next, whatever happens in the next couple of years, the next cycle, right, whatever, just there's no more opportunity in crypto, right? It's like suddenly being in crypto and being in TradFi are the same kind of opportunities. I don't see that being the case, and I don't see that being the case for a very long time. What I can tell you, I don't know much about numbers. I don't know much about TradFi, but what I can tell you is gold is estimated to have about a $17 trillion market cap. Just like, I say that out loud and it blows my mind, right? It's like insane. all of crypto is 1.6 trillion or something along those lines.
Yeah.
This is one asset that is 10 times bigger. And that's just absolutely ridiculous to me, right? Insane. It wasn't very long ago where Nvidia stock had a greater market cap than all of crypto combined. And that's just one stock. Now, granted, it's one of the biggest stocks in the S&P 500, so it's cherry picking. But again, that just kind of shows you how much money is out there and how still a very relatively, very, very tiny, thin slice to the overall pie that is crypto. Yeah. So, of course, it's going to get muted because wherever that opportunity is, I'm a firm believer of this, greed will follow, right? If there's opportunity, human nature is going to kick in. Humans, if I know one thing, are greedy as shit, and they're going to try and eat a piece of that pie and get, into that opportunity. And that pie is going to get bigger. It's going to take over. So of course it's going to get muted, but there's still opportunities going to be abundant. And I can only hope and pray that at this point you've been doing well enough in crypto and well enough in markets that by the time that volatility gets muted, it doesn't really matter, because a 50% move on, 20 times what your net worth is from a year ago is just as fruitful as a 20x, from a year ago. So that can only be the hope. But yeah, that's where my thoughts are. There's still going to be opportunities, always abundant. It's everywhere. So you can still dig into the trenches. I'm sure there's always going to be those meme coins and the low caps and whatever. But yeah.
Yeah, I share your general thought process on that as well. I don't think it's going to be anything, overnight. And I think most people, they're also referring to like the sort of the Ponzi that we have, right? The shit coins and meme coins. That, I think that's not going away for a little while. So I don't think that's going to go away overnight. And along the same lines, what are some narratives that you're keeping your eye on in terms of investing? One specifically that I want to ask you about is perp dexes, because after FTX, there's DYDX and a bunch of perp dexes that are coming to the forefront. What are your thought process on perp dexes, and what might be holding them back right now, where they can go in the future? So it's basically two questions. One, if there's any narratives that you currently have your on in terms of AI or any wider sectors, and what your thoughts are on perp dexes.
Generally, I tend to think this way for pretty much everything, especially in crypto. Can perp dexes be a thing? Absolutely. Is it going to happen anytime soon? Probably not. As far as I can tell, every perp dex that I've used is still a joke in comparison to a centralized exchange, right? This is why I don't have any perp dex ref links in my bio. Instead, I have Bybit, right? Bybit is 10 times better. And yes, there's the con of it being centralized, but it's too good of a actual experience in comparison to using a dex that it's well worth the con, in my opinion. But yeah, I try not to, think too hard in the fundamental aspect of things, because at the end of the day, like I never traded on DYDX, so I can't really talk about that specific exchange. But I'm still going to trade the coin as long as my system agrees with the direction and it sets up for me nicely. So I don't really have too many thoughts, but I tend to think, and I made the same argument for the metaverse back in 2021. I said something along the lines of like, is the metaverse going to be a thing? Probably, right? I would imagine that it would be, and crypto gaming is probably going to be a very big topic. It happens to be that, a lot of this is game theory, and the people that, participate in this industry and stare at screens all day also just happen to, when they stop staring at their trading view screen, they go stare at, League of Legends or like whatever. So yeah, it's probably going to be a really big kind of sector to the market one day, but I think we're still very far out, right? And I made this argument in 2021, and I still uphold this argument. And so far, so good. It's been true. There's not really a good metaverse out there that comes to mind immediately that I would want to participate in, and it's not like a cult. And it's not like early in adoption and not really taken seriously compared to anything outside of the crypto world, right? It's just kind of how I see it. Another big thing particularly for dexes is your dex. There's a good chance that your dex is not dex. like I don't know how else to put it, but there's a really good chance that okay, here's how I can say this. Right? When a US person goes to log into a decentralized exchange and it tells them you are blocked by geolocation, is that a DEX? Is that actually decentralized then? Is it actually, hey, it's just a protocol, there's no one behind this, there's no, right? I understand that there's regulations and rules and, people can get in trouble and this, that, whatever. But if that is even a possibility, then that's not really a DEX then. And at least in my mind, maybe people disagree and I lost some people here. That's totally fine, right? I'm not here so that you can subscribe to my thoughts. But yeah, that's just kind of how I see it. So, and we saw this happen. I forgot what DEX it was. But didn't they blacklist all their users or particular users or something, or particular wallets, and then, or Tornado Cash or something, and then a bunch of people got blacklisted from decentralized exchanges. It's how does that even make sense? Now, granted, that's preventing money laundering, whatever. So it's supposed to be a good thing, but if that is possible, if that's a thing, then it's not actually a DEX. And I think people saw that particularly with the Tornado Cash fiasco that happened a couple of years ago.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for answering that in detail. Let's shift gears a little bit to, well, there's two things I want to do. First, I want to do audience questions, right? But unfortunately, we got one. It was the same day as a Jupe airdrop, so I got very low engagement on that tweet. So there were no audience questions. So I'm thinking of trying something new, and let me know if you want to go through with this or not. I'm gonna call it a rapid fire round, and I'm gonna name off like I'm gonna say a word, and you just say whatever the first thing that comes to your mind is.
All right, let's do
it. All right, Solana.
Shitcoins.
ETH.
Vitalik.
Crypto Twitter.
Cesspool.
Bitcoin ETF.
Sell the news.
BlackRock.
Buy our bags.
Meme coins.
Doge.
Trading Edge.
Non-existent.
Gambling.
Crypto.
Leverage.
I don't know.
No, you were really quick.
Liquidation. I don't know.
Nice. No, I love it. That was great. So coming up on the last section of this conversation, I just wanted to get a better sense of how what a typical day looks like for you, what your current routine is, how you manage your time.
How I manage my time. I wake up every single day to my puppy waking me up. She steps on my face and gives me a bunch of kisses and says, "Daddy, it's time to go out." Then I take her out and feed her, and I make my cup of coffee, and I sit down and I write my daily market update. And then, I run through my whole process. I scan markets, I put on trades, I, shit post on crypto Twitter, might be write a thread, respond to some messages. And then I try and clock out at like 5 o'clock PM EST. So I try my best. I find it detrimental to have not really like a work-life balance, especially now that I'm starting to mature a little bit more. I have a fiance, I have a puppy, right? I'm going to be a homeowner soon.
Yeah, congratulations.
That's great. Appreciate that. Thank you. But yeah, so I have a lot of responsibilities, and life is real. It's not, right. Hey, my biggest issue is, what rank am I in this video game anymore? It's not that.
Yeah.
When I clock off the whole trading mindset. So it's really unhealthy to not have that work-life balance. And the beauty of markets is I get to dictate when I want to work, but the kind of con that comes along with that, the double-edged sword, is that I could wake up at 3 a.m. and decide I want to start trading. Right. And or I could be watching a movie at 10 p.m. and decide, hey, let me pause this. I want to watch markets for a little bit. Like, it starts to really impact you in more ways than you can honestly fathom. And so I try my best to really cut it off there and work a true 9 to 5. Now, granted, I tend to wake up at 7 or 8, but I try my best to clock in, clock out kind of mindset. And then if you want to get a hold of me, hey, what are your thoughts on this chart? At best, you're going to get a mobile chart from me, right? I'm not going to go log into my PC and turn, Mercury back on just to answer your question or do whatever. But yeah, that tends to be the case. But yeah, that's really my whole process.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Do you follow, do you subscribe to anything in terms of nutrition or I don't know, stuff like cold shower, working out, or watching what you eat, or following some certain kind of nutrition plan or anything of that sort?
I won't go too deep into it, but what I can say is getting the right amount of sleep is definitely a big thing. And also staying hydrated is another one. I think that, if you were to take a poll for probably the entire population, most people are lacking in both of those departments. Getting the right amount of water in your body and getting the right amount of sleep per night.
Yeah.
So I really try and stay on top of both of those things. The fact that I haven't had to get up and pee during the stream or during the podcast so far, it's really astonishing.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest, bro. I've been holding it in. I've been holding my
usually
a lot of water.
Man, I stay hydrated, so I try and I usually am peeing 17 times a day.
Same,
so
same.
But yeah, and then so for that I can give water alpha.
All right, let's hear it.
when you're drinking water and you're just drinking water that doesn't have any minerals in it, you're actually stripping your body of water. Water is a natural kind of magnet
Yes.
to any kind of minerals that are in your body, or really just in general. So if water is coming into your body, it's going to want to attract, like a magnet, any nutrition or any kind of nutrients or vitamins or minerals out of your body, and you're going to pee it out. So you're actually worsening. You're actually not hydrating yourself, even though you're drinking water. So what you have to do is you have to add minerals to it. And I have a nice little, it's like underground, like not very big company, just kind of local thing. But they have just like a filter, and it's just purely mineral based, and it's all things that you would see in like nature. Um, but yeah, it's not super holistic. I know people are like, dude, this guy's crazy. He's a guru. He's this, that, whatever. It's not that. It's actual science. You can go look it
Yeah,
up.
no, 100%. Yeah, you could look it
Yeah,
up, and I mean,
something like this filter has. I don't know every single thing that's in it, but I did my due diligence at the time. I researched every single aspect. But just to give an example, there's charcoal in it, and that goes
yeah,
back since like way before, right, birth of Christ or like whatever. That is known to be a filter that people used way back when. But charcoal, what it does, it actually it bonds, or it binds onto bad chemicals, bad things in your body, and then you are inevitably always going to pee out charcoal, because it in itself is like a hindrance. Like your body does not need that charcoal, but when you put it into your body, it's going to bind onto other bad things, and you're always going to pee out your charcoal, and so you're peeing out whatever the bad thing is too. And I say pee out charcoal, and people are thinking like, dude, so you pee and it's black? No, it's not like that. It's very, very fine dust. You cannot even see it with an actual naked eye. You'd have to use a microscope, kind of thing. But that's the case, and it's like that. It's layered, kind of like minerals. And yeah, and it filters out the water and takes all the bad stuff out. First of all, if you have lead in your tap water or whatever it may be, you want to filter the tap water. It's going to take the lead out, and it's going to replace and add minerals to it, and then you're replenishing and hydrating your body. That's water alpha, and you should. I highly, highly recommend everyone go do their own research on that. It's a really big thing, and you don't realize how big it actually impacts you. And maybe it's placebo effect, but I can tell you it's working for me. And other than that, getting the right amount of sleep every night, taking naps when I need to. I try to avoid naps, but sometimes you're just so tired, you just lack sleep so much, it has to happen. Staying hydrated, and I try and stay healthy. I practice calisthenics, which is a body
nice,
weight
nice.
workout routine, graceful movement kind of thing. So I'm always on a pull up bar all the time,
Nice, nice.
trying to do that and stay on that routine. But yeah, that's about it.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, the water alpha is legit. Yeah, but yeah, anyone that's listening in, feel free to do your own research. I mean, that's why if anyone follows the UFC or fighters, they use a certain technique to lose weight, which is they drink a lot of water. It's called water loading. And that's how they shed water. So, like you said, it's about the electrolytes and the minerals in the water. That has to do with hydration. So, anyone that's listening, go check that out. I think that's really great information.
Yeah.
And so, just to wrap it up, just a couple more questions here. I know we've been talking about this throughout the entire conversation, but if you want to, really give concise points in terms of what advice would you give to anyone listening in who wants some blunt Mercury wisdom for this cycle?
Trade the trend. Respect the trend. Do not fight the trend. Do not try and be a contrarian just because you want to be a contrarian. Respect whatever the trend is, both sides. And sometimes you have to be okay with the fact that the trend is there is no trend, right? We're just going sideways. And that's when you want to turn that trend mindset off. You got to know when to turn it on and turn it off. And truthfully, your edge is going to be your discretion in knowing when not to do something. So if you're, a range trader, you need to not trade trends. If you're a trend trader, you need to not trade ranges, that kind of thing, or at least not trade it with the same kind of philosophy or approach or, concept and whatever as you would when we're in a trend trading environment. So you got to know when to turn your brain on and turn it off, but you really, really got to respect the trend.
dropping bars. And are there any Twitter account recommendations or any accounts that you would nominate for an episode of Perpetual Perspectives?
Oh man,
you can give them to me offline if you want. You don't have to do it right now.
I think, man, I think I will. I'm gonna feel terrible because, there's just so many. There's so many people who come to mind who are just complete alpha, and I have nothing but respect for them, and and I wouldn't want to leave anybody out. I would just feel terrible.
Yeah, no, you could take your time and provide them to me whenever you get a chance.
Absolutely. I'll do that.
I reached out to Doc as well, by the way, so I'm trying to get him on.
Oh yeah, Doc's the homie. Doc's a new up and comer, man. He's a killer. Like seriously, there's not very many people that are very new, especially to trading, relatively new. Like when I say new, a year or two at best. Who have a very, very solid kind of foundation. And Doc's one of those people, and we get along really well. We share a lot of the same philosophies, and he's a good dude to talk to, and he's also a very genuine and humble and nice guy. So yeah, we've done a couple of videos together past couple of months, and going back and forth, sharing our on different YouTube accounts and whatever. But yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's kind of the general sense I got. So I was looking forward to getting him on as well for a conversation. Is there anything else that you'd like to plug?
Not necessarily anything that I like to plug. I already told, public Discord, private Discord, depending on how much you want to, get in tune with my thoughts and whatnot. Other than that, I have a ton of free educational content on YouTube. You could study that and figure out every single, detail to how my brain ticks and how I approach markets. There's a whole playlist on there. I think it's literally called Mercury's Education. And I even have like the basic one, which is applicable for everybody, even the beginner. And then I have like the more advanced one, people who've already been trading. They don't need the basic, what is market structure kind of thing. Right. But yeah, so that, and then my Twitter account, and I write some threads there, and I talk about psychology a lot. I also give directional biases, and sometimes, talk about my altcoin positions maybe, or whatever. Most of the time it's shit posting, but I do occasionally drop the, yeah.
No, you tweet some great stuff, and your YouTube channel is pretty comprehensive as well. So anyone that's listening and check out Mercury's YouTube channel. I mean, yeah, it's pretty comprehensive, the information you put out already, and the catalog of stuff that you have out. So anyone that's listening in, take advantage of this stuff. I mean, it's free information. People are putting in their time and all this effort to provide this information to you for free. So go check that out. And I really appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation with me, man. I mean, I was looking forward to this, and it met and exceeded my expectations, but I already had high expectations for the conversation. So
I really appreciate it, man.
We're going to have to get you back on, man. We're going to have to get you back on at some point.
Anytime.
I enjoy having this.
Anytime. I really enjoyed the conversation with you too, man. It was a pleasure, honestly. Thank you for having me on, and thank you to everyone listening. So anytime.
Awesome. I really appreciate that. And before ending, I'd like to read this quote by Nietzsche that I believe encapsulates like this conversation and kind of like the theme of it. The most intelligent men, like the strongest, find their happiness where others would find only disaster, in the labyrinth. Their delight is in self-mastery. They regard a difficult task as a privilege. It is to them a recreation to play with burdens that would crush all others. So on that note, to everyone listening in, I hope you enjoyed this conversation, and we're able to take away some actionable items or things that you can consider to improve upon. Until next time.
Peace.